we haven't talked to you for a few weeks, I almost don't know where to start. We've kind of been saving Warrior stuff till you come back, but I almost don't know where to start. I'll let you start.
Let's start with Draymond.
Okay.
To me, Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler's futures, in my opinion, seem very secure with the Warriors. And while Draymond Green, I would very heavily predict he remains here past the trade deadline. To me, considering the trades that could or couldn't be made and some of the building blocks needed and his play recently compared to the other two, mega stars on the team, is a little bit more in question. And then obviously you mix in, some of the ejections, the storming off the bench, the stuff with Steve Kerr, which I know you talked about with McMahon and Bontemps. He has had a little bit of a roller coaster that I think has settled a bit, partly because typically with Draymond, it's a little bit of like a boiling over, an explosion, and then a resettling. And I think that they've said it. They said it last night. His focus level has been really good in the last week or so, and his, dealings with teammates and coaches and all that has gotten into a good place. I thought it was interesting last night. There was a lot of talk yesterday because Steve Kerr had gotten ejected, right? We talked about in the Clippers game, and said that his mother was very upset with him. So Nick Friedel asked a question to Draymond about, what's his mother been mad at him? And Draymond just whips his phone out and starts reading recent text messages by his mom, who is a legendary figure back to the dynasty days, just killing him for getting ejected and his recent play and all that. And said that one of the texts was, "We need to have a heart to heart." And he's like, I left that on red. I haven't replied to that because he wanted to stack up a few games, before, having this heart to heart, and to the point of like, he is trying right now to, it seems like, get his season back on track, but also that resecures his place within this Warrior situation as franchise wide. They decide, front office ownership, which direction they're going in the next month. We all know it's such a big month for everybody across the league to assess their situations, but obviously the Warriors are prime among that.
I think it's been interesting in addition to the Draymond stuff that's been happening, chapters 804 and 805 in the Draymond annals. The Kerr has been like sort of, and I know that he's always, pretty honest as you're going to see in a head coach. He's been like very, very blunt.
He's been on edge. I was going to say, it seems like, Wendy, more on edge than usual, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's on the last year of his deal. He publicly announced prior to the season that we'll see afterwards. There's a freedom to the way he's operating. There's a finality in the way he's talking in a lot of ways. And I think this is him making sure he's painting the story how he believes it should be painted on his way out the door. And I'm not saying he's out the door for sure after this year. I think if they storm up to the, whatever seed and have a decent playoff run, I think it's very possible he's back. But he's very clearly and transparently, as he continues to do, laid out the idea that maybe it's it. And if it is it, you don't have to wait for the documentary to hear his honest thoughts on how this is all going down, because he is going to tell you into a microphone how it's going down.
Well, I just like, he was like, we're a fading dynasty, which is, it's true. Like, I'm a, middle-aged guy in my 40s. Like, it's like, it's true. It hurts to say, but I got gray hair coming in, it's true. They are a fading dynasty. And then like, I think it was the other day, I think you wrote about it. I think you tweeted about it. Where, Draymond was talking about how Steve met with him and was like, "Hey, we can't play the way we played a couple years ago. Like, the league has changed. Like, you play this way, like, we're going to lose."
Yeah, that was last night when I was talking about this increased focus level. I think there's been a lot of, attention about Draymond's ejections or the storming off the bench. Obviously, that's the stuff that interests fans, but really internally, they've just been saying, stop turning it over. Like, he's been turning it over like crazy. And they apparently had this meeting where Steve, as you said, he laid it out and said, we're not as good as we used to. So these turnovers, can't be as common. Number one, less margin for error. But two, what I thought was interesting, he said the league is different and these young up-tempo teams feast off those live ball turnovers. And it has killed them in a bunch of games. I can remember the game in Portland, Steph Curry scores 48. They lose the game because there was a ton of turnovers. Like Toronto the other day, y'all watched that game where they just collapsed late. It was just a wave of turnovers. So yes, but Steve's going to go out the way he wants to go out. He's always been a great talker and he's probably being even more transparent than ever. But also, like, Steve Kerr's the number one TV free agent if he wants to be. He could jump back into coaching if he wants, although he says, he's not leaving Steph for another job. He could also go chill in San Diego, Brian. I mean, I know you remember we were there this summer. He has a decent little setup if he just wants to kind of, fade away into the background, come back onto TV if he wants. Politics, I'm not saying he's going to, but if he wanted to, I know a lot of people in the state of California that would be interested in him getting mixed into that. So to me, there's an empowerment and a freedom to him right now. And I think that's part of why he did not want to sign a contract extension.
And do you think this is a good development for the Warriors in whole, or?
Depends on who you ask. I think the realism is good, and at times I think can settle people down to be like, hey, yes, they have a now, let's try to win the 5th title in the Curry era. But I think part of what he's saying is like, also needs to be a little bit of a celebration on this run out the door. There needs to be a little bit of acknowledgement of the accomplishments, but also the acknowledgement of reality. And again, this is the conversation we've had. There also he doesn't want everybody to end like Clay did, or going back to The Last Dance, which we've talked about on this podcast. It doesn't need to be sour and bad feelings and burnt out and all that. And I think that is fueling some of this. And to your point, like, have some of his public comments about Jonathan Kuminga, for example, been helpful in the Kuminga valuation and trade market and relationship with the franchise over the last 2 years? No, he gets himself in trouble with some of his honesty, but also his owners emailing fans and that's coming out on Reddit and Draymond's having Draymond has podcasts where he's delivering takes on his own team, but he's also delivering takes on the NFL. This is the Warriors. They just spout content and deal with the aftermath.
Yeah. By the way, that email, like, is what Joe Lacob said in that email, like, egregious? Like, he was talking about, what did he say about Kerr?
It was coaches' desires regarding players was the line that everybody's like, we know the player he's talking about. So it wasn't, but you mentioned it, are Steve's analysis recently on the team incorrect?
No. Yeah.
They talk. I enjoy it. Let me say, as somebody who covers the team now for over a decade, like, I enjoy the honesty.
No, I think Draymond's, I don't like his behavior on the court when he loses his temper, loses his cool. Like, I absolutely don't like that. But Draymond is such a value add to the league. Like, the league is a better place because Draymond has been in it. I just don't want him to choke people. I don't want him to punch teammates. But Steph Curry is one of the greatest gifts the league's ever had. Steve Kerr has had one of the most amazing careers of any player or coach. Like, his playing career is among the most remarkable playing careers of any role player in the history of the league. People get offended when you say that Robert Horry was a role player, but he was. But like Robert Horry and Steve Kerr, like, find me role players that had more Steve Kerr got to play and win with Jordan. Got to play and win with, Duncan, he's
had a charmed existence,
got to
also Team USA, gold medal.
Yeah. Got to learn under Phil Jackson, got to learn under Greg Popovich, got to coach Steph Curry, right? Wins multiple gold medals. Also, his father was assassinated and he had a horrible misguided back surgery that caused debilitating pain for years and has changed his whole life. So, like, his story is one of the most remarkable. A movie on Steve Kerr's life, a documentary on Steve Kerr's life would be amazing, and it's still going on. So yeah, you telling me that the folks involved with the Warriors aren't like wonderfully additive to the league? Like, I mean, heck yeah.
And I think the points you're making is kind of in a roundabout way, the point that Steve's making, which is like, this is a famous, legendary run. And I think he just wants bigger picture, thoughts about them and reaction to them more than just the day to day, angst because they're 19 and 18, then they're 20 and 18, then they lost 3 in a row, that type of stuff.
There's a fine line between resignation and still being competitive. And I think he's trying to toe the line of the resignation and the reality of where this team is, while also still trying to be fair to Stephen Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green when Draymond is on. The crazy thing, guys, is things never end well. There isn't a dynasty that has existed in the NBA where it ended cleanly, where everybody had great feelings toward each other, and it was bookended in such a storybook way. It always ends ugly.
Golden State Warriors fans, lock in, because what's quietly developing around Trae Young might be one of those moments where the league blinks, hesitates, and the Warriors step right through the opening. Right now, the Atlanta Hawks are not in a rush to move Trae Young. That alone tells you everything you need to know. When a team is truly desperate, deals happen fast. When a team pauses, surveys the market, and waits, it's because they believe leverage is coming. And that leverage might come from a franchise exactly like Golden State. The Hawks have been in serious discussions with Washington, but here's the key part that changes everything. Atlanta is actively waiting to see if more teams enter the conversation before the February 5th deadline. That means the door is open, not cracked, open. And in a league where movement is driven by timing, urgency, and fit, the Warriors suddenly make a lot of sense as a late, powerful entrant. Trae Young hasn't demanded a trade. He hasn't forced Atlanta's hand, but the reality is obvious. The Hawks and Young didn't agree on an extension. That matters. When a franchise cornerstone reaches that point, the clock starts ticking, whether the team admits it or not. Atlanta is listening, they're evaluating, and they're absolutely preparing for a future that may not fully revolve around Trae. Now flip the lens to Golden State. This is not a team rebuilding. This is not a team collecting maybes. This is a franchise staring directly at the final elite years of Stephen Curry and refusing to waste them. Steve Kerr has openly acknowledged the offensive limitations. The front office knows it. The locker room feels it. There are too many nights where Steph carries the entire offensive gravity of the floor, and when teams load up on him late, the Warriors struggle to create easy advantages. That's where Trae Young changes everything. Trae Young is flawed, yes, but he is one of the most dangerous offensive organizers in basketball. High usage is not a weakness when the system is built to support it. In Golden State, Trae would not need to dominate the ball the way he does in Atlanta. He wouldn't need to be the sole engine. He would become a second gravitational force, someone defenses cannot ignore, someone who punishes traps, blitzes, and late switches. Imagine this. Stephen Curry running off ball while Trae Young initiates. Imagine defenses forced to choose between doubling at the logo or staying home on shooters. Imagine Draymond Green operating in short roll situations with 2 elite shooters bending the defense in opposite directions. That's not theoretical basketball. That's pressure basketball. That's the kind of structure that turns regular season inconsistency into playoff reliability. One of the quiet truths in the reporting is that other teams have not aggressively registered interest in Trae Young. Minnesota and Brooklyn are mentioned, but interest is not mutual. That matters, because when a star's market is thinner than expected, opportunity appears for teams with clarity and urgency. Golden State has both. The Wizards want a long-term salary anchor and draft capital. They're rebuilding. They want entertainment, development, and structure. The Warriors are the opposite. They want impact, control, and playoff offense. That's why Atlanta waiting matters. If the Wizards remain the lone aggressive suitor, Atlanta loses leverage. And when leverage shifts, creative front offices strike. Golden State has tradable contracts. Golden State has young players whose timelines don't fully align with Curry's. Golden State has picks they are willing to move if it means extending this championship window. And unlike the Washington, Golden State offers Trae Young something he has never had in the NBA, a system that doesn't require him to be everything every night. This isn't about turning Trae Young into Stephen Curry, it's about freeing both of them. Steph gets relief from constant defensive overloads. Trae gets structure, spacing, and leadership that amplifies his strengths while covering his weaknesses. Defensive concerns become manageable when offensive efficiency rises. The Warriors have always believed offense can create defense by controlling pace and shot quality. Trae fits that philosophy more than people want to admit. And here's the most important part for Warriors fans. This is not a panic move. This is not desperation. This is strategic aggression. Waiting until February allows the Warriors to assess health, chemistry, and market behavior. If Atlanta doesn't see the return they want from Washington, they will absolutely listen harder. That's when Golden State steps in with optionality, flexibility, and a clear vision. Trae Young to the Warriors would not be about headlines. It would be about leverage, about creating a playoff offense that doesn't collapse when Steph sits, about forcing defenses into impossible choices, about maximizing every remaining elite season of a generational superstar. The Hawks may not be in a hurry. That's fine. The Warriors don't need to rush either. But when timing meets opportunity, Golden State has shown time and time again they are willing to move decisively. This is not noise. This is positioning. So Warriors fans, the question isn't whether Trae Young is perfect. The question is whether the Warriors can afford to ignore an opening that directly addresses their biggest offensive problem. Because windows don't stay open forever, and teams that wait too long usually watch someone else raise the banner. Let me know what you think. Would a Curry and Trae pairing elevate the Warriors back into true contention, or is this a risk you wouldn't take? Drop your thoughts, hit like if this breakdown helped, and subscribe to Warriors Nation News for everything unfolding next.